Hi, my name is Khleif, and I'm the host of the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. And every week I interview multifamily rock stars, and we talk about how they've built incredible wealth for themselves and their families through multifamily properties. So hit the like and subscribe buttons to get notified every Monday when a new episode comes out. Let's get to it. Welcome to another edition of How to Build Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Khleif, and I'm thrilled you're here. And we have a real treat today. Gentleman on that's one of the more impressive people I've probably ever interviewed. His name is Jeff Klotz. And I'm going to have him tell his story, but I'm just give you a few highlights. So, he's grown to over 1,000 employees. He's been involved in 125,000 apartment units, 42 developments, tons of other projects, got a portfolio valued over $1 billion, and, basically sits at the head of 6 independent companies that under the umbrella of the Klotz group of companies. Very, very impressive. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. My pleasure. So, I'd like to start where I usually do, and that is just have you take a few minutes and talk about your progression, because I was really happy to see that you started out in single family like I did, and just maybe you can talk about how you started and kind of how things grew to here.
Sure. Well, I love to, and I appreciate that. That was a great intro. No pressure. Yeah, it's kind of hard to follow those footsteps, but I think my story, it's interesting to me. I kind of slipped and fell into the real estate investment world at an early age. I literally bought or acquired my first rental property in high school, and it was really by accident. And so, as the story goes, I was slipping through the local Beaches newspaper, and I saw an ad for sale, or ad in the for sale column that said house for sale, $5,000. And I thought, wow, that's great. How can you, who would not want to buy a home for $5,000? So I pick up the phone, I call the guy, and he promptly laughs at me and says, silly kid, that's $5,000 down. And, I'm 17 years old in high school. And, back then, high school kids didn't really think about business or investment or even real estate, right? All we cared about was the beach and surfing and girls. And
what year was that, Jeff?
That was in 1994.
94. Okay. Thank you.
So I'm dating myself a little bit. It's hard. Please don't make me do the math. I hung up the phone, didn't have a clue what he was talking about, and, promptly went and asked my dad. I said, hey, Dad, what's this guy talking about? What does this mean? So, my dad, who was a firefighter by trade, didn't have a whole lot of investment experience himself. He sat me down and had to talk with me. He said, well, Jeff, this is how it works. So he explained, cash flow and mortgages and seller financing and interest rates and, you're doing good if you're collecting more rent than your costs are or what have you. So he gave me a 5-minute crash course, and of course most of it went over my head as a high school kid. But the parting words of that conversation was literally, you should do it. And so I thought, okay. So I called the seller back and arranged a meeting. So the next day I skipped school, went to his local office, which was actually in the back of the local BFW bar. And so here I am, a 17-year-old walking into the bar, and this kind of crusty older gentleman kind of slides a contract across the bar and says, here's the contract. It's not negotiable. If you want to buy the home, you can do a drive-by, but you can't go in it because I don't want you disturbing my tenant. And I thought, well, that's a little weird, but, it was an opportunity to buy a home. So I thought, well, this is great. So I did a drive-by, liked the house, and went to closing. The interesting part about closing was I learned you had to be 18 to sign a contract. And so I remember having that realization in the middle of the closing table. And luckily I wasn't carded by the closing attorney, or else.
No kidding. That's hilarious.
But it was kind of a joke, because when you're 17, it's all about how old you have to be to do certain things, like go to a movie, buy this, buy that, or what have you, drive. And so, I bought the house, and I later went on to buy all 30 of the gentleman's home. So he had a portfolio of 30 homes, and he was kind of the essential buy here, pay here house reseller. So every house he had, he probably sold and repoed or foreclosed on probably 20 or 30 times. I mean, I think his average hold period or average success period was probably a year. So when he saw me coming, he thought, wow, this young kid, he'll never figure out how to make his mortgage payments. And so every time I'd save up a few extra dollars, I'd go back to him, and every time he'd repossess a home, I'd go back to him and I'd buy it from him. And so fast forward a couple years, I'm probably 19, maybe 20 years old, I start to learn and understand that created a lot of equity in these homes, and I've raised the value a lot. And I started to educate myself on refinancing and basically took the entire portfolio to the bank and got one heck of a line of credit. Ended up with about $5 million in equity or accessible equity, and paid the guy off. And I remember literally walking up to him at closing and trying to give him a hug for paying him off. And he looked at me and he was like, you son of a gun, you put me out of business. What am I going to do? And I said, Joe, I'm giving you a $3 million check here. Like, this is going to be the best time of your life. He's like, no, you don't get it. Like, my wife's going to spend the money. I've got nothing to work on. Like, she'll probably divorce me. And it was a funny story, but I was pretty proud of myself for, paying the guy off. And I ended up again with a lot of credit that really allowed me to pursue my dream, which was the acquisition of multifamily. And so, during that 2 or 3 year period from 17 through 20, I built not an entire business, but I built a construction company and I built a real estate management company around these 30 homes. But I had really fallen in love with the multifamily industry. So as a teenager, I literally learned of the economies of scale and the efficiencies and the challenges that were possessed by most larger multifamily owners. And I just always felt that I could do better. And I just saw the multifamily industry as almost a wide world of opportunity for me. And so, but there's certain costs to enter, as you know. The multifamily is expensive. And so when I was able to refinance that single family home portfolio and end up with about $5 million in the credit line, which was accessible, then I really kind of kick-started my multifamily investment career.
So let me ask you this. Now, this is in Jacksonville, or is that what?
Born and raised in Jacksonville or Jacksonville Beach, and really started my investment career here in Jacksonville. Growing up, everybody wants to leave their hometown to go out west, go up north, go down south, or what have you. And so I became pretty well grounded and committed to the area when I started purchasing real estate. I did spend some time in Gainesville while attending University of Florida. And, that was good because that was also a pretty good market and what have you. And so, by that time we had built up the construction company. We had built up the management company, early, and we'll call it like late to mid 90s, 97, 98. We were serving most of North Florida, including Gainesville, Jacksonville, Ocala, out to Tallahassee. And, but we were really starting to grow both the platform and our investment portfolio. And so, but still being a really young kid, not coming from any wealth, not knowing really any rich people, and not really understanding capital markets, and really not having much credit, it was difficult, right? So I had an initial $5 million credit line that I was able to use pretty carefully, but I really couldn't figure out how to do much more than about 4 real estate transactions a year. And that's going on for about really the first 10-year stretch so probably 1997 through about 2007, I really struggled to grow the company or do more real estate deals, right? Because so let's face it, right? There's 3 months in a quarter. It takes you about 3 months to transact on an average deal. You've got 30 days worth of due diligence, maybe 45, 60 days worth of financing. And if everything goes right, you could probably do that 4 times a year. And so I was buying on average about 900 to 1,000 units per year for about a 10-year stretch through kind of about 2007. And so
this is without any outside capital. This is just your own deals.
Well, it's with very limited outside capital. So
wow.
Through about 2007, I never really understood what I'll call capital markets. And so I understood the country club investor. I could knock on a few doors. I could call some lawyers, some doctors, some dentists, and I could get what I would call small sums of capital. My secret back then was to quickly figure out how to add value and quickly refinance the property so I could pull out that added value and then roll it into the next deal. So that also kind of explains that limited kind of track of doing just 4 transactions a year. Mm-hmm. And so, but I possessed a huge desire, almost this innate desire and drive to grow an organization. One of my greatest senses of accomplishment is not how much money I make or even the real estate deals I've built or developed, but it's really the organization that you build. And so, my solution to growing the organization was to grow it vertically, which was build out the platform, right? So, fast forward, through 2007, we had basically built out the 6 major food groups, which was the brokerage business, the mortgage banking business, the property management business, the the development business, the construction business, and the investment banking business. We continue to grow that. Even today, we've got about a dozen subsidiaries, which include a title company, an insurance company, a marketing company, things like that. But those 6 major food groups are still what we consider the most important aspects of the entire life cycle, or from concept through completion.
Can I ask you a quick question? I'm sorry to interrupt. This is fantastic. So you've got these 6 vertically integrated companies under your umbrella. Do
Right.
you and I looked through a few of the websites, and I see you at the top of that food chain, and every one of those, do you have individuals that manage each one of those entities for you, or just give me a little insight into the management structure of that? It just seems so almost overwhelming.
Sure. So when properly staffed, you've got the Klotz group itself, which is literally the parent and operating platform of a group of wholly owned subsidiaries, which includes all those different verticals. And
Right.
so when properly staffed, each one of those business units has someone in charge, right? Most commonly referred to or titled a president, but in some cases they're a managing director, or maybe they have a different job title that they've had for years in the past, and they prefer to keep it. But generally speaking, there's always a business unit leader in charge of the entire effort, right? And so they then manage the company, the P&L, and everything with it.
Okay.
Very
impressive. Sorry I interrupted. It's just
it's
so impressive to me. Yeah.
So you're basically describing, you're keying in on some of the challenges of running so many different efforts, which
Right.
none are easy, right? I mean, I always say they're simple, but they're not easy, right?
Right.
And so they're necessary parts of what I'll call the investment life cycle, because one of the most valuable lessons learned during the last downturn was, if you really wanted to control your own destiny, you needed to control your own resources and not really rely on third-party folks to help. Because when things get tough, you need to really rely on your own team.
Well, your timing kind of made my eyebrows go up a little bit. You said you did this through 2007.
Right.
And then it sounds like you did some sort of a shift. So I'm excited to hear what that is, because of course, I lost $50 million the next year. So I'm very, very, very familiar with that particular area and time.
I mean, like the joke is, we're still all scarred and beat up and bruised with almost significant damages suffered from that period of time. Nobody's prepared for what we're going through today.
I know, and I want to chat with you about that. But please tell me what was happening back in 2007 and how you got through that era, because I'm really interested to hear.
So in my world, 2007 was still gangbusters. So being obsessed with trying to figure out how to grow a business and understand the real estate investment world, I started to really understand and wrap my arms around capital markets and how to access capital, and really what the whole concept of being a real estate investment sponsor was, not a syndicator, but really a sponsor. And so, we had started to really build a team and gear up for what we thought was a, end of 2007, 2008 launch of our first real estate fund. And of course, in 2008, that's when everything kind of just hit a screeching halt for us. I mean, it was literally third quarter of 2008 when all of a sudden somebody flipped a switch, and what we thought or saw was happening in the rest of the world became a very real reality that it was happening in our world as well. And so that delayed the launch of our first real estate fund till 2010, but it didn't slow us up on our desire to continue to purchase real estate. So, when you build a machine or a monster, as I like to refer to it, you can't just stop. You got to continue to feed it, and you got to continue to do deals. And so, half of our time spent like going into the recession or the downturn last go around was really focused on how to survive, how to maintain our portfolio. And I kind of naively adopted this philosophy or strategy that if we could keep our properties well operated and well occupied with the rents paid, who really cared about what happened to the rest of the world? Our values would continue to keep up and what have you. And so, clearly
it's not naive. I don't think it's naive at all. So.
Well, clearly I was wrong, because we lost significant value in the portfolio. But the one thing that it really helped me understand was, he who can operate the best has an upper hand in these types of circumstances. And so we got really, really good at the basics, really, really good at operating, and really, really good at operating from almost a defensive position. And so, if you go back to, that last downturn, and you really study the analytics, our properties fared better, if not the best in the market or the comp set one of the best. And so,
and why do you think that is? Can you were at a high level right now. Let's go a little bit more micro because it's so relative right now.
Well,
Yeah.
Sure. I think that generally speaking, nobody had a portfolio like ours with as much of a hands-on, boots on the ground, kind of roll your sleeves up, get your hands and fingers dirty approach. And so, I was on every asset we owned every week. I was traveling like a madman. I was obsessed with trying to figure out how to beat the recession, right? And the big part about that was there was really no history to describe what we should expect as a next step, right? I learned back then that, don't say it'll never happen because it just might happen.
And it just did again.
Well, yeah. So this go around, I've learned, don't say they'll never do that because, well, then they will, right? They'll shut down the beaches, they'll shut down schools, they'll shut down everything, right? So it's kind of I guess the lessons learned here are there are no two downturns alike, right? So we went from doing about 1,000 units a year and about 4 units per year through about 2008 to in 2009, we acquired 9 deals. 2010, I think we did 13 deals. 2011, I think we did 20 deals. 2012, I think we did 36 deals. 2013, we did over 40 deals. So we got to the point where we were doing, on average, in really the middle of the downturn, which was kind of the peak of our business, about 10 deals a month. And so we were doing, and that was both, acquisitions and dispositions, but we built up pretty quickly after about 2009. So from about 2009 through about 2014, 2015, we were acquiring about 10,000 units a year on average. And that was, some pretty explosive growth for us. And keep in mind, I'm not a well-trained CEO. I had no prior experience as a CEO. I've been self-employed my entire adult life. So I had no clue what I was doing. I was just figuring it out as I went. And so, literally building an organization from 100 employees in 2007 to 1,103 in 2014.
Can I, I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt you because I'm loving this, but I just want to drill down on something you just said. So can you give us a few insights as to maybe some hurdles and some strategies? Like me and my organization, we just implemented the EOS system. I don't know if you're familiar with the book Traction, and it's a model for management and meetings and things of that nature. Sure. Did you adopt somebody's system? Did you bring in, and I kind of want to go back actually a little bit, when you first got into this business, did you go do some courses? Did you do some training? Was this all self-taught? Did you have any mentors? Can we go back there first? Then I want to come back to the business growth, if you don't mind.
So the answer is no. Back when I got started in the business, this concept of education and boot camps and training, and even what I'll call, corporate mentorship or what have you, really didn't exist. I mean, I had some friends and some family that maybe had dabbled in business ownership or what have you, but for some reason I possessed this innate desire to be a businessman, to be to be self-employed, to grow an organization, to be an entrepreneur. And I didn't understand it back then, but now I do a little bit better. So unfortunately, as much as I tried to educate myself and learn and become self-taught, there was really, at least I had very limited access to anything that was was anything like what you have today, right? If you want to get into the world of multifamily investment, it's easy to find a mentor, easy to find a coach. Mm-hmm. I mean, there is a plethora of materials out there. I mean, you guys do a phenomenal job at
thank you.
Hand-holding the folks from almost beginner mode to success mode, right? And so it's amazing the resources available today as provided by folks like yourself that really fast-track that process and that effort. I mean, if I had to do it all over again, I would have adopted some sort of formal system like what you mentioned, EOS, or there's a bunch of them out there.
Right.
A lot of them are, in my opinion, they're the same, whether it's,
they are. They're just repackaged. The EOS is kind of a rendition of the Rockefeller Habits book. Right. And so did I got so many questions I want to ask you, but did you adopt any of those, or did you just kind of, plow forward, make the mistakes, learn from the mistakes, keep going, or just give me a little idea of how because that's such massive growth. Sure.
So the answer is no. In hindsight, I should have. We turned the lights off in the car and pressed the gas and kept driving. I mean, it was literally, it was a battle every day, and there was so much good happening that you really couldn't say no. And we were growing by leaps and bounds, and the opportunities to buy discounted and distressed, troubled or broken.
Oh, perfect timing, perfect freaking timing. Yeah.
And we were buying this stuff priced by the pound, and we really couldn't say no. And so,
right.
And we were creating massive amounts of value. I mean, during our peak, our construction company was turning almost 1,000 units a month. So we were doing 900 and something odd unit turns, throughout the Southeast, right, in 11 states. And so it was, to say it was gangbusters. Now, let's face it, right? You learn as a young child, growth spurts are typically followed by growth pains, right? Mm-hmm. And so we sure felt our fair share of those, and ultimately that's what really prompted us to really evolve the organization, right? So back 10 years ago, or literally since inception, my focus was C-class, lower income, value add, and ground up development, but workforce housing in the middle market, and we. Like a lot of folks, that's your easiest entry path into the industry because it's the most affordable. But we, unlike a lot of folks, we stayed true to that sector because, we created a lot of success in it. So we became known as really in the South, the go-to group for what we'll call C-class value add. And in fact, our business strategy in 2009, we set out to be the first to really institutionalize that asset class, because one of the things that we recognized over 10 years ago was that, the big investment firms and the big household names or the institutions of the world never had access to C-class multifamily, because back then, none of these syndicators and none of these small sponsors existed. Nobody who really owned C-class had any type of corporate governance or any type of institutional grade investor relations or reporting or what have you. And so the bulk of the majority of C-class multifamily was owned by moms and pops. And, they were consistently, even in a good market, creating trouble for themselves because mostly they were over leveraged and they were capital constrained and what have you. So we kind of found, even through the better part of the market in early 2000, that we were still able to buy discounted C-class real estate.
Okay.
And so,
with your connections, were you able to? Did you have were you approaching receiver companies that were in properties that were receivership and dealing with special asset groups that were trying to liquidate stuff? I mean, did you become known as a source for them? Yeah.
Well, yes, and we became the receiver in a lot of cases. So,
oh, no kidding! Wow.
Because we were in the property management business, because we were in or are in the mortgage banking business. So, kind of early 2000s. We built a lot of small bank CRE departments with our mortgage banking business. And so a lot of those guys didn't really want to own and operate their own commercial real estate lending departments. And so they farmed it out to us, and we were building their CRE loan departments pretty large. And so, we were their hero up until about 2009. And then of course they started calling us saying, Jeff, get us out of it's all your fault. Like you gave, get us out of this mess. What do you do? And so, we stepped in as receiver, as trustee. We put our management company to work for the banks and the lenders, and we became really, really good at workouts. So a lot of times the banks and the lenders would call us on when they started seeing early signs of default, and we'd step in and try to perform some sort of loss mitigation efforts and analysis and really strategize a workout that was a win-win for everybody. But ultimately, you could only do so much, and so we were kind of front and center when these assets started going back to the bank. And as court-appointed receiver. We were managing many of them. And so we doubled the size of our management company through really receivership and trustee services for mostly, banks and lenders or other creditors. And so, the platform itself really put us in the right place at the right time.
Oh, yeah. You had all the pieces. So let me ask you this. You obviously wrapped your arms around private equity because you can't do what you did $100,000 at a time with doctors and dentists and lawyers. So can you speak to that a little bit? Can you speak to maybe how you got into that world? Because I think that's probably the belle of the ball, or going to be the belle of the ball for us moving forward as well, is really trying to align with good private equity operators. And so can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, I can. And our first fund and even our second fund was really geared towards what I'll call retail investors. We worked with the broker-dealer channels, and we worked with a lot of, our minimum investment was always $100,000.
So you worked with broker-dealers as well. Okay.
We worked with anyone and everyone. Keep in mind, back in 2009 or 10, if you were talking about launching a real estate fund, people looked at you like you were crazy. I mean, they literally, I can't tell you how many people told me, Jeff, you could never, like, don't give up. Don't even try. Like, you're talking nonsense. There's no way in the world you, a de novo first-time fund sponsor, is going to be able to successfully raise blind pool discretionary capital during this time. And we realized, that there were a lot of folks, a lot of investors out there that really, really wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to buy, pennies on the dollar real estate.
Now, at that time, was 506C out, or were you able to go to non-accredited, or you had just totally accredited investors?
Totally accredited investors, yeah.
Just accredited. Okay. So you could advertise at that point, though.
We could not advertise.
Oh, you could not.
We could not generally solicit. So we generally had to work through placement agents, investment banks, broker dealers.
Gotcha.
And rely on our, on our network, basically, right? So a lot of folks, we were successfully able to convert. A lot of folks that wanted to buy real estate from us realized that, well, buying real estate and owning real estate isn't really all that it's cracked up to be. So maybe I'm better off investing $500,000 or $1 million with Klotz instead of buying a piece of real estate from Klotz. And I just let him do all the work. And so that was, that really played a big part of it, because I think real estate became a big buzzword for discounted assets back in those days. But
well, sure. And the media made everything look like, people are dying in the streets. As you know, they make it much more scary for people. And we're encountering that now with investors. We had 800 doors under contract, and we have people that got crushed in the stock market, and now the fear is pervasive. So how did you push through that? Because it's happening right now again. How did you push through that market sentiment, that fear, like you started to describe, people saying you're crazy?
Well, the beautiful thing about multifamily, especially when you're able to purchase it at a discount or distressed, broken, troubled, is you can create almost an instant level of excitement with the value you create, right? So we were able to create so much excitement. It was almost like, in a world back then where everything was doom and gloom and the entire world was falling apart, we had this little space carved out where we were buying multifamily and creating immediate value and an immediate excitement. And again, many of these deals we weren't holding very long, and so it really wasn't a 5-year lockup or hold. It really wasn't.
You got good returns for your people real quick too, and then that word spreads, yes?
Exactly. And as an investment sponsor or a joint venture partner or what have you, we've always been very transparent and collaborative and highly communicative. And so we like to really brag or share the success and take, like for me, it's all about the journey and the, so we've really focused hard on taking our investors and partners along with us in that journey so they can feel the excitement, and there's no kind of, there's no wondering or worry or concern. I mean, when you're creating value literally on day one, it becomes pretty exciting for them. But we had early stage success, right? Our first fund was oversubscribed, second fund was oversubscribed, and then the third fund, we realized that it was really tough to create the type of growth or raise the type of capital that we wanted to in $100,000 or $500,000 increments, and so we started to really focus on a more professional type of investor.
Family offices or
exactly.
Okay.
Family offices, endowments, pension funds, real estate investment firms, fund of funds, and then even private equity. And so our third fund, we realized that while approaching private equity, they didn't really want to participate. Like, they wanted to control the show, and they wanted to control the investment thesis. So getting a private equity fund or group to write you a check for a commingled discretionary funded investment, we realized was pretty difficult. But what we did get was we got a lot of the principals and the presidents and the executive team members who loved our investment thesis. They said, you know what? I can't really take the company in as an investor, but we like to privately invest. Like, I think our board wants to invest, or I think, I personally want to invest. And so we got a lot of that going on. So that was reassuring that we had a business plan and a business strategy that was appealing. And then, after a few of those, one of our groups kind of took us under their arm and said, Jeff, you might want to consider the programmatic joint venture structure. And of course, I said the same thing I did back in 1994. What's that?
Right.
And they said, well, we'll together create a specialized program. We'll give you one big slug of capital. You, of course, it won't be discretionary. You'll give us major decision rights, but we'll get to control and customize the entire process so that when we want to sell, we can sell, and we don't have to worry about other investors basically driving or steering the business strategy in a different direction than we want. So we did our first $55 million programmatic joint venture right around 2012, 2013. And, again, that's why when I told you kind of the progression of deal flow, or how we went from, doing just 4 deals a year to 9 deals a year to, 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 deals a year. It was that injection of those large sums, or those large slugs of programmatic capital, that really kind of put the pedal to the metal, if you know what I mean.
So let me ask you this. How limiting was that kind of a relationship? Because I know we just bought an asset in Kentucky last year where pretty much the private equity made the guy sell. He was very upset about it. So,
Sure.
Can you speak to that a little bit? There's obviously the positives is the sheer scale you were able to buy at.
Right.
Is there a flip side?
Well, I think you coach on this, right? Picking the right investor or partner carefully is the key, right? So we learned that in some cases the hard way, because sometimes you get someone up, who's typically young and has no experience in real estate, but just graduated college, sitting in an ivory tower, making investment decisions that in your heart are wrong or incorrect or not the best. But he who has the gold makes the rules, and so it's really tough for me having to learn lessons I had already learned before. But picking the right type of partner is important. So we always say, look, I'm not just interested in a check. I'm interested in a true partnership, and we're interested in a relationship. And so, our best investment partners have become friends, have become mentors, and have really helped us in our evolution as an organization. And that's what we're looking for, right?
No, I love it. I love it. We're going to take just a second to hear from our sponsor.
Okay.
Rod, I know a lot of our listeners are wanting to take their multifamily investing business to the next level. Now, I know you've been hard at work helping our Warrior students do just that using our ACT methodology, which is awareness, close, and transform. Can you explain to the listeners how they can get our help?
You bet. Guys, we've been going nonstop for 3 years, building an amazing community of like-minded people. And our coaching students, which we call our Warriors, have had extraordinary results. They've purchased thousands and thousands of units. And last year, we did over 1,000 units with our students. And we're looking to grow this group and take it to the next level. We're looking for people who want to follow a proven framework that's really step by step, and then leverage our systems and network to raise equity, to find and close deals, and to build partnerships nationwide. Now, our Warrior community is finding success in any market cycle. So if you're interested in finding out more about how you can become more of our incredible network and take advantage of the incredible opportunities that are coming very soon, apply to work with us at mentorwithrod.com or text CRUSH to 41411. That's mentorwithrod.com or text CRUSH to 41411.
Welcome back. Now, we were just talking before we broke for a second about the importance of picking the right partners. And I've got a resource for you guys. Here it is right here. It's a free publication called Questions to, no, that's not it. That's the wrong one. It's a list of questions that you should ask before you get into partnership. I don't have a copy of it here, but you can get it just by texting. Hang on one second. Partnership to 41411. It's got about 50 questions. So you ask the hard questions up front, and it ties right into this conversation. So I thought I'd throw that out there. It's a great resource so that because I've got a multifamily mastermind. There's about 10 billion in assets in there. And some of the big hitters in there have broken up their partnerships because they didn't ask the hard questions up front. They didn't, really dig in. And, question I've got for you, Jeff, is to talk about an early failure that positions you for future success. I think that would be real interesting if anything comes to mind. I know you weren't prepared for that question, but.
Well, it's interesting. It's not that I can't think of any. There's just so many of them, right? I think like this business for me has been the school of hard knocks. And
right.
How do you learn? You learn from your mistakes and you learn from your failures. And the key is not to make them. The key is to only make them once and learn from them the first time. That's my theory anyhow.
I call them seminars. Yeah, that was a $50 million seminar for me in 2009.
Right. Some could be an entire college education, right? And so those are the ones you really want to avoid. But I think that there's so many different lessons learned along the way, whether it's, how do you hire, how do you recruit, how do you align yourself with either, your investment partners or your team. Alignment is key in any relationship. And so,
can you drill down on that just for a second? Because that's somewhere I wanted to go with you, because there's no way you could have done this without finding the right people. And even the heads of your different entities, and then the people below them. Give us some tips on finding the best people.
Well, it's all about the team, right? As you pointed out earlier, you can't do it on your own, and without a rock star team, you'll never be as great as you can be. You'll never reach or maximize your full potential. And so, I wish I had. I'm still learning as we go, right? So I can't really tell you exactly how to find the right people, but I can tell you it's hard work. It doesn't happen naturally. It doesn't happen by accident. Every now and then you find someone who's a great fit, or there's more instant or natural chemistry, and that's what we really look for. We talk a lot about what we've kind of coded the C culture here, which is just basically a handful of kind of corny words that start with the letter C, but they're really after the right type of chemistry. So, we seek folks that are coachable, are willing to communicate well, collaborate well, coordinate well. Those four main topics really create the right chemistry. And so, it's interesting. Nothing that we do is simple, easy, basic, average, mediocre, normal, typical, or traditional. Like our partners set bars that are extremely high. And so, we have to recognize, our team, myself and my existing team, we have to recognize that we can't just simply survive by being normal, average, basic, typical, traditional, or whatever, right? Just normal amounts of effort, normal amounts of skills or capability or action just doesn't do it for us, because the bar's set pretty high and everything we do is challenging. And so we have to recognize that when interviewing and when sourcing or recruiting talent. And not so much we have to find people that are that way, but we have to find people that are willing to be that way. And not just in their job performance, or their hard skills, but their soft skills, right? So, you've heard it 100 times or thousands of times. It can't always be about your hard skills or your education or your capabilities, your experience. It's a lot about your personality or your soft skills, and finding the right personality or the right fit, the right alignment, the right goals, I think is critical. Now,
emotional intelligence, as it were. So you said coachable, chemistry, communicate. What were the other two C's?
Well, there's collaboration, communication, coordination, coachability. Right? Those create those initial foundational efforts or behavioral traits create good chemistry, or help to create good chemistry. Right? But what we really seek out is to create that right type of chemistry. Because if I look back over the 25 plus years that I've been doing this, when I'm able to create, as an individual, the right relationship with the right resource, it's like a rocket ship. We can create significant success. But when that fit is just not there, success is tough. It's troubling. It's difficult. It requires work. You want the right relationship to be natural, and that's not that easy, and it's not that easy to figure out. And
do you occasionally? I assume occasionally you realize you made a mistake, and you have to make a change. That certainly that's happened with me. Well, let's shift gears for just a minute. Talk about soft skills. What drives you to build something this freaking massive, Jeff? I just please enlighten us.
Look, I think I'm crazy, right? I think clinically I'm probably diagnosed with something. I just haven't gotten that far yet. I can't really explain it. I just have this innate drive, a desire. Like, I wake up every morning, I want to build and create and accomplish, and I won't go to sleep unless I'm happy or satisfied or content with what I've accomplished for that day. And there's just something about it, and I can't figure it out. I've tried to. Neither one of my parents were self-employed or business people, and I just, no one in my family is, for that matter. So I really can't. And it's not about the money. It's really about building something, creating something.
Okay.
And that's where we have our most fun, our most satisfaction, our most enjoyment. And at a deep personal level, I believe as humans, we're designed and built and created to accomplish. And I like to think that I'm just fulfilling my purpose while refining it every step of the way. I also like to think I'm just exploring my potential, which is part of the fun too.
Nice.
So the challenge of it, I think I told you earlier that when we were launching our first fund, 9 out of 10 people we spoke to said, "Oh, it can't be done. Don't do it. You're crazy. You're nuts. Like, what are you thinking?" And all that did was kind of add fuel to the fire.
Right.
And I mean, it was almost like I became obsessed, like insanely obsessed with launching a fund because so many people told me it couldn't be done. I had to prove it wrong.
Nice.
So, maybe that has something to do with it. But I think
Sure.
To do what we do,
let me ask you. I'm sorry. Please finish your thought. I forget.
I was just going to say, to do what we both do, you can't be normal. You got to have a little bit of craziness in you, right?
Right. Now, let me ask you this. I've got a lot of aspiring investors listening to you right now. They haven't pulled the trigger yet. They're maybe super analytical. Maybe they need to have all the facts before they take action. What would you tell that specific demographic? Because that's a big one for me is these super analytical people that they're super successful once they take the plunge. But what would you say to them?
I mean, I think, I'd tell you the same thing or tell them the same thing my dad always told me, like, just do it.
Do it.
But the number one thing I try to make people understand, because there's a lot of education out there and there's a lot of folks that, like, no one really understands without kind of peeking behind the curtain how difficult and how hard it is, right? And so there is absolutely no get rich quick or even get rich easy solution out there. I mean, this is one of the harder businesses and one of the harder industries. The great news about that is with the right type of effort and the right type of work and the right type of commitment, you can succeed. But it's not easy. And I think everyone who really wants to create the type of success that they dream of has to understand the type of effort, the type of action, the type of commitment that's necessary. Yep. And the biggest problem I find or I see is people generally take that for granted. They just don't understand how difficult or how hard it is.
Right.
And I think you really got to prepare yourself mentally for that challenge. It's a war, and
you got to want it. You got to want it. Yeah, you got to want it. So, is there anybody that you look up to in this business? Is there anyone that comes to mind when I ask that question?
Well, there's a lot of folks, right? And so I think there's a lot of the industry leaders that have created a lot of success. I personally admire folks that have created substantial success from nothing, or self-made. I mean, there's something genuinely impressive about self-made men or women. And so I've got a few partners, probably shouldn't name them.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I was just listening to Sam Zell being interviewed on Tim Ferriss. That's about the only podcast I listened to. And it was just so impressive. Came from nothing. And,
Well, I've got the link here on my desktop that is scheduled. I hope to be able to have some time to review that this evening. It's a couple.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible. So impressive. Yeah. Well, listen, Jeffrey, I really appreciate your very, very valuable time today. I know how incredibly busy you are, and you've added incredible value and certainly inspired tens of thousands of people with this conversation. So I'm really grateful. And I'm going to have to drive out to Jacksonville. I'm in Sarasota. I'm going to have to come out there and buy you a meal one of these days because I'm super impressed. Okay.
I'm in Sarasota a lot, so hopefully.
Oh, are you really? Fantastic. Well, please let me know the next time. And thank you so much for adding value today, my friend.
Thanks, God. Take care.
Thank you.